Hello, welcome to our orchestra webinar for the Georgia Department of Education Orchestra Community. My name is Shawn Morton and I'm your orchestra community moderator. And for this webinar, we're going to talk about the Georgia Standards of Excellence in Orchestra. So first, we're going to look at what does the Georgia Standards of Excellence look like? How is it laid out and how you can use some of the components to make things make more sense at school. And then we're going to look at the different standards that are actually found in the Georgia Standards of Excellence. And then finally, we're going to address some of the non-performing standards and how we can make those really come to life in our classrooms. So first, we're going to talk about how the Georgia Standards of Excellence are laid out. So what is in the Georgia Standards of Excellence? Obviously, you can get a copy online at the Georgia Department of Education. You can even just put it in your Google, Georgia Standards of Excellence for Music, or you go to the Fine Arts section of the Georgia Department of Education. But you're going to get course numbers. You're going to get course descriptions. You'll get headings for each of the standards that we're responsible for teaching, then the actual standards, and then under each standard will be at least one or more indicators of achievement. So that's kind of the layout, and we're going to look at what that looks like in the actual GSE document. So here's a sample from the Georgia Standards of Excellence. This is for beginning orchestra, and I pulled this from the 6th grade through 8th grade, the middle school GSE. So you can see the title is given for the name of the course. You can see the course number, and this one is for 6th grade beginning orchestra. And then you'll see the actual course description. Now, there is a different course number for beginning orchestra 7th and for beginning orchestra 8th. So that's important to know that each of those levels will have a different course number, but the course description will be the same. So course numbers. Our course numbers are sequenced, whether middle school or high school. In middle school, they're sequenced to correspond with grade level and the difficulty level of the course. So 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, and then is it beginning, intermediate, or advanced? And they go in that order. And so the numbers will sequence in that order. For high school, it's a tiny bit different. It's sequenced by the difficulty of the course and how many times the student is repeating that course for credit. So in high school, we can take things multiple times, the same course multiple times for credit. So, for example, if we look at intermediate orchestra in high school, we see 5305710. So that's the first year that student took intermediate orchestra. If they take intermediate orchestra for a second school year, then you would use that course number with ending in 20 instead of 10, then 30, then 40 if they used it all 4 years. The next course after intermediate orchestra is advanced orchestra. So you can see the number changes from 057 to 058. And then it ends in 10, 20, 30, or 40 based on if it's year 1, 2, 3, or 4 that student is taking that course. So our course titles. For middle school, we have 3 different grade levels that can have these titles: beginning, intermediate, or advanced. You can have 6th grade beginning, 7th grade beginning, or 8th grade beginning. Now, if you look at the GSE for that, those are true beginner classes, first year players. You can have 6th grade intermediate, 7th grade intermediate, 8th grade intermediate. These would be students basically in year 2. So if you have a 6th grade intermediate orchestra, these would not be your first year players. These would be probably second year players. Maybe they had 5th grade orchestra. Or if you have 8th grade advanced orchestra, that would be your third year players. Or you could have an 8th grade beginning orchestra. So maybe these students have had no prior experience and it's their first year. Or you could have an 8th grade intermediate. Maybe they started as 7th grade beginners. So you have to kind of look at the standards of excellence and actually read the indicators of achievement for that course to make sure that you have the right course number with the level that you want. In high school, it's a tiny bit different. It's really based on how many times we're repeating a course for credit. Almost all the high school orchestra classes are repeatable for up to 8 semesters of credit. There's one exception, which is Prelude to Orchestra. In high school, the class called Prelude to Orchestra is actually a course for true first-time orchestra students who have no previous experience, true beginners, and it is not repeatable. You can only take it for 1 school year or 2 semesters. So that class is for true beginnings high school students. Now, for beginning orchestra, when we use that course name in high school, that means beginning of high school. It's very confusing for curriculum people. And so you have to really help educate your curriculum admin or whoever does your scheduling. Beginning orchestra in high school is actually fourth year players. These are students that have 4 years of orchestra, or this will be their fourth year of orchestra. And so if you look at the standard of excellence, it should correspond to the skills that you'd see in a ninth grade orchestra student if they started in sixth grade. Intermediate orchestra are students that maybe are at the next level, advanced, and then mastery. So you can kind of see how that layout would go in order. Now, you can repeat a class for credit. So let's say you have a really hotshot violinist that comes in the audition for your top ensemble in high school as a ninth grader. They can have Mastery 1 in ninth grade, Mastery 2 in 10th, 3 in 11th, and 12th grade they can do Mastery 4. They're all still in the same class with Mastery 1, 2, and 3 students if they're in Mastery 4, but they're scheduled in there because it has to do with when we start getting into pathway seals. If your district is doing the Georgia Department of Education Orchestra Pathway Seal or Fine Arts Pathway Seal, then it's important that you track where they are and make sure that they have enough sections. So course descriptions. Our course descriptions can really be our friend and be really helpful with our admin and parents and kind of explaining what our course is about and what can be expected. So this is again from beginning orchestra 6th grade, but it says this is a performance-based class. So this helps parents and administrators know that what they'll see when they come in the room or what the students will experience is playing every day. They're building instrumental music skills and reading of music. So it won't maybe look like what they're used to in a math class or a language arts class. And it goes on to talk about, the goals of the class. And the last sentence to me is very important for our courses. Participation in concert performances outside of the regular class hours is required. That's important because our classes are generally co-curricular. And while we may not have tons of outside things, it's really important that our families and that our administration help understand that our things can take place outside of class, and then that's part of the expectations of our course. If students are unaware of this, then that could be problematic for you later on. And if administration doesn't know this, then that can be hard when they're trying to support you when you're trying to work with a family that maybe doesn't quite understand the responsibilities for the course. So then also we're going to look here a little more detail of when you get into the actual standards. So you can see the standard heading. This is the performing standard for middle school. You can see it says performing, and then the actual standard, you see it's labeled MS, which means middle school, BO, beginning orchestra, and then PR means performing, and then standard number 1. So middle school beginning orchestra performing number 1. And it's perform a varied repertoire of music on instruments alone and with others. So you can see then below that, A through G, we call those the indicators of achievement. A through G is how we're going to demonstrate or show that we are mastering the actual standard. So we use those skills below in A through G to demonstrate that we have learned that skill and that standard. So for example, by the end of 6th grade, students should be able to use the finger patterns of D, G, and C major. And so that would demonstrate that they can perform a varied repertoire of music. So again, you would use that then to look at what should students know by the end of the year. This is not what students should start with or where they should even be at the middle of the year, but by the end of the year. And so what skills should they be learning and what should your end goal be? So this really helps with backwards planning as well. So looking at indicators of achievement across different content, or not different content, different grade levels. So here we have middle school orchestra beginning, so that MSBO PR1. And then right next to it, we have middle school intermediate orchestra, which would be like 7th grade orchestra, performing number 1. So you can see it's the exact same standard, but the indicators of achievement change. So the standards stayed the same all the way from 6th grade to 12th grade, or 6th grade beginning orchestra to mastery orchestra. The standards are going to stay the same, but what is going to change, the difficulty level, will be what you find in the indicators of achievement. So if you look at the beginning orchestra one on the left-hand side, you'll see under letter F, utilize the correct finger patterns in D, G, and C. If you look on letter G on the one for intermediate orchestra, you see it becomes D, G, C, A, F, and the key of B flat. So we've added 3 more keys in 7th grade. So you can see we've raised the difficulty level by adding more keys. So we increase our knowledge each year in the course by adding more indicators of achievement or upping the difficulty level for the indicators of achievement. Like if you look at D on the beginning orchestra, you can see demonstrating correct left hand, right hand, and finger placement. But then we start talking in C on the intermediate side about bow distribution, bow weight, speed, and placement. So we start getting into more detail, sound and tone development. So those indicators of achievement really help us differentiate between the different levels of orchestra, because if you actually look at the standards, they're the same no matter what level you're in.